Well, the NBA offseason has just been really a soap opera. And
I love it.
It's a lot of people do. It's better than the regular season. Is that what some are saying? Better than the postseason, maybe, some are saying. Chris Herring joins us, senior NBA writer, ESPN.com. Good morning, Chris. Rodger Weiland and Chris Honorado on 104.5 The Team, ESPN Radio in Albany.
Hi, guys. How are you?
We're good, Chris. Let's start with the headline, and that is Kyrie Irving and his relationship with LeBron and Cleveland, and how you think this whole thing will eventually shake out.
I mean, short of those two guys having a heart-to-heart and kind of hashing this out, it seems like you probably trade the guy. I mean, if you're Cleveland, you probably try to see if that is something that you can resort to, because, you know, we've seen this happen before with Kobe and, you know, him wanting out of the Lakers. And if you can keep two talents like that together, then you go for it. But at the same time, if you can trade Kyrie now, and it's very clear that it's not going to work from a fundamental standpoint of those two guys getting along with each other at this point, I mean, you can get a king's ransom for a guy like Kyrie. You know, we've seen a couple trades look underwhelming from the team with the leverage. You know, Jimmy Butler getting traded, the Bulls not getting a great return for him, Paul George getting traded, DeMarcus Cousins getting traded, and none of these guys really fielding huge offers in return. But Kyrie Irving is a lot younger than all of them. He just turned 25. He's got 3 years left on his contract, 2 that are guaranteed, and is a bankable superstar. You know, the kind of guy that has shoes that sell well, that has commercials. I think has a movie coming out in the next year or two that's based on him. So you make that trade if you can find somebody that's willing to give you exactly what you want, a couple rotation guys, a couple draft picks, and maybe you actually keep Cleveland afloat for at least the next year while LeBron is there.
Cleveland's in a spot here where they need to know whether LeBron James is going to be sticking around. Is it at all possible for a conversation to be had between Cleveland and LeBron and say, hey, next after this season, are you coming back? I mean, that kind of changes the whole mindset of how they do business here with Kyrie, with LeBron, depending on what LeBron is going to do.
Sure, from their vantage point, you'd love to do that, but it seems like LeBron's side has already made it pretty clear that they're not going to do that. And that's part of what comes along with being the best player in the world, is that you know, obviously if Cleveland pushes you too hard, you can kind of use that as a rationale to say, look, you know, I don't owe you anything. You know, I'm in the middle of the contract. I'm going to weigh my options at that point. I don't want to, you know, tip my hand too early, and stuff could change. I mean, the Kyrie Irving example being a big one. Between that, you know, obviously seeing, well, why would you commit? What has Cleveland really done to prompt you to commit that you're going to stay there with how crazy this offseason has been, with what happened with David Griffin, and not bringing back someone of that caliber who, you know, city that hasn't won a championship in more than 5 decades, they finally win one, and then, you know, have a disagreement over money and let the guy walk. But also knowing that Dan Gilbert has a history of not keeping his GM there beyond the one term. So, you know, if you're LeBron, you look at the roster situation, you know, maybe in some ways the Kyrie thing is a blessing in disguise if you feel like you get anything close to equal value for the guy. He's obviously not the best defender, and so maybe you find a more balanced point guard, and maybe that helps LeBron just as much as it would to have a superstar scorer alongside him as well, given that you already have Kevin Love there. Their defense was a huge problem last year, and a big part of trying to keep pace with a team like Golden State is getting someone that can defend a little bit better than Kyrie. So, yeah, obviously you'd love to lock him in and get him to commit, you know, and maybe even make an extension some sort with him, but that's clearly not going to happen. And I think from Cleveland's vantage point right now, the best thing they can do is try to field the most competitive team they can and try to convince them to stay by winning another title.
We're live at the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame, but we're talking hoops with Chris Herring of ESPN. You can find him on Twitter at Herring_NBA. Also writes for 538. Chris, let's assume that the Cavs have to trade Kyrie Irving. It's just not going to work out any other way. And assuming he doesn't go to Boston, which would, I understand, of course, bolster their chances to win the East, would Cleveland, simply because they still have LeBron James, be the favorite in the East in your mind?
Probably, which says so much about how good a player he is, how great a player he is. And, again, figuring that they're not, unless Cleveland takes back all young contracts and all young players and all draft picks for Kyrie, which I don't think they would do because of the fact that LeBron is there. You have to venture to guess that LeBron by himself could still get this done. The Boston series was not particularly close. Kyrie was obviously part of the reason for that. But you'd like to think that if they get anybody that is a starting caliber player to replace Kyrie Irving, and even if they don't, Derrick Rose is there, and Derrick Rose, for as bad as he is on defense, still averaged 17, 18 a game, whatever it was for the Knicks. Shot pretty well from the field and got to the basket. He's going to have a more high-powered offense around him than what he had in New York. And so, the defense probably doesn't take a huge step back from where they were by losing Kyrie. The offense does, but they have, they have room to spare there on offense. I think they're a good enough team to where they could probably withstand that and probably still beat Boston, even though Boston went ahead and got Gordon Hayward. They closed the gap, but the gap was massive, and most people didn't think that it was closed enough by the Gordon Hayward move to really say that Cleveland shouldn't be the favorite anymore. So I do think they could probably still win the East. And again, that's what the Cavs are probably banking on here, is just trying to convince LeBron that this is still your best chance to win a title. The East is still so much weaker than the West. And if you do decide to go West or sign somewhere else in the East, you're going to be starting over a little bit, and you're going to have tougher competition that way.
Talking with Chris Herring, senior NBA writer, ESPN.com. Let's bring the New York Knicks into this discussion, Chris. Do you think there is a chance that Kyrie Irving, because the Knicks are a team that he did mention that he would be willing to be traded to and play for, do you think the Knicks and the Cavs could work out an amicable deal that would get Kyrie at Madison Square Garden?
Sure, they could. It sounds like I've seen a report or two, including from the guy that broke the Kyrie Irving story, saying that the Cavs aren't really that interested unless the Knicks just offer the farm in terms of draft picks and what have you, that the Cavs aren't overwhelmingly interested in anything that's going to bring back anything less than Kristaps Porzingis, which at that point it doesn't make sense if you're the Knicks. Also, I'm not totally sold on the idea. I mean, I do like the idea of Kyrie on offense with someone like Porzingis, but frankly, there are a lot of elements of this that would make it look a whole lot like the Carmelo deal, where the team is pretty much committed to moving forward with what they have, and that's kind of what the Knicks have said. They've said that as recently as a week ago, where they're going to go younger. Kyrie is younger, and so it's not to say that he's not, but he also is kind of like Carmelo in a guard's body. He doesn't defend much. He can move the ball. It's not to say that he can't pass because he's got 6 assists a game for his career. But he's not. I mean, Derrick Rose is also a guy that has been right around 4, 5, 6 assists for his career. He's not he has tunnel vision sometimes when he drives to the basket. I looked at a number yesterday when I was writing, and Kyrie Irving has the 4th lowest percentage of passes out of his drive attempts to the basket, and Derrick Rose is 3rd. And so when you look at stuff like that, he's not the most inclusive player. When you look at how he scores and how efficiently he scores, when he goes from 1 dribble to 2 dribbles to 3 to 6 dribbles to 7 dribbles, his shooting percentage goes up. So he's someone that thrives the longer he has the ball in his possession on a given play, and that kind of stagnates an offense. And so you're running into some of the same issues that you're trying to get away from now at Carmelo. And I'm not totally sure that it makes sense to try to build around a player like that again when you just saw it fail the last time. And so if you could just get a player like that, sure. But if you have to give up your best player, your 2 best young players to try to get something like that done, I'm not convinced it makes sense. And so are the Knicks interested? I'm sure they are. Every team should be. But does it make sense given where they are and, everything it would take to get them? I'm not totally sure that it does.
Chris, your gut feeling at the beginning of the 2018-19 NBA season, will the Cleveland Cavaliers have either LeBron James or Kyrie Irving on its roster?
I'm going to go with no, just because I don't think that the Cavs are doing very much at all at this point to convince LeBron to stay. And it seems like the Warriors, are just as strong as they were. And by definition, because they're going to have Durant there for a second year, probably stronger. than what they were a year ago when they rolled this group out together for the first time. So I don't see the Cavs really moving in any given direction. I don't think Derrick Rose is a long-term answer for what they're doing. The general manager situation is a new one for them. And the only thing that I think, like I said, that the Cavs have in their favor is the fact that there's familiarity with that situation. But I don't think that LeBron is worried about that. I think he feels like he could go anywhere and make any team a contender. There is a chance that he could do that with any team in the East, really. If he's worried about the East versus West dynamic and how competitive the West has gotten, he could still stay in the East and go to a team there. So I don't think Cleveland's done a whole lot to make him want to stay beyond the fact that, that he knows that city there and that organization. But he's also won a championship, which is what he said that he wanted to do for that city and for the organization. And given that he's done that, they should be kind of circling the wagons a little bit just to make sure that that they've done everything they can to convince him to stay, because he's already fulfilled what he promised that he wanted to.
The soap opera known as the NBA offseason continues. Chris Herring, senior NBA writer, ESPN.com. Thanks so much, Chris, for a few minutes here in Albany, and we'll talk to you down the road.
Sounds great. Take care.